The slua, or fairy host, known in mainland European mythology as the Wild Hunt, has always played a large part in Scottish folklore. This army of spirits was linked with the Fey realm, and often thought to be comprised of the Daoine, or the fair folk. It is said that they would amass great spectral armies, and the grey host would travel west to wage war in unknown lands and in unknown realms. But as this folk belief evolved, it began to incorporate the souls and ghosts of the Scottish people themselves. It was believed at that time that the deceased warriors whose lives were taken in battle would serve as the rank and file soldiers in the Legion of the Damned, led to war by the magnificent and powerful Sidhe of the other world. Yet as time went on, and the belief in the Sidhe became more hidden, and in some areas completely outlawed, these tales of the slua would adopt a new form. It was said that the spectral host would be comprised of clan warriors killed in battle, and on calm, frosty nights, the rattling of armour and the clatter of blades could be heard upon the cold air. The fallen soldiers returned to this earth to settle ancient grudges and wars. It was said in the Isles by many an old Scot that when there is deep darkness on the night, and the burden of anger on the tide, the slua will arise. The spirit host is nimble and quick, and will never cease in its endless hunt for revenge. The war is against Clan Ranald. On Slua, or the Isle of Skye, there has always been friction between two clans, the MacLeods and the MacDonalds of Clan Ranald. It is believed by some that this feud dates back to the 16th century, where three young MacLeod men became stranded on an island owned by Clan Ranald. The men were initially welcomed, but after some time, one of the clans became increasingly disrespectful. The perpetrator of this unpleasantness is unknown, and both clans claim that the other was at fault. But either way, the MacLeods were filled in, they got a hiding, they were battered. By this I mean that they were thoroughly beaten and sent upon their way. When the bruised men returned to the MacLeod chief, he was enraged at the disrespect shown to his people, and instantly set out to settle the debt. The MacLeods arrived on the island with an army that far outnumbered the MacDonalds of Clan Ranald. The islanders ran to what they believed was the safety of a cave, and planned to hide from the warriors and outwait them there. But soldiers from the MacLeods spotted a Clan Ranald scout and devised the location of the others. A great fire was lit at the entrance of the cave, which trapped the men within, killing all 395 MacDonalds. When the news of the MacLeod's savagery spread throughout the islands, the MacDonalds of Clan Ranald vowed to destroy the MacLeods, and for hundreds of years, through many generations, that battle has taken place in the Scottish Isles. And it is in these turbulent times that our tale takes place. Many years ago, there was a short but strong man, native to the Isle of Skye, who belonged to the clan of MacLeod. When not engaged in battle and soldiery, he made a good living for his family as a sheep farmer. It happened that on one evening, while the man was flaying a sheep in his home, that he felt an overwhelming compulsion to step outside. So, very much still bloody from his task, the man exited the home and was instantly pulled into the air by two spectral warriors. Before he had time to think, the man was flying through the sky, followed by a small host of ghostly MacLeod clansmen. The haunting group would eventually descend and land in the centre of an old graveyard. There a rallying cry would go out, ordering the MacLeods to war. and as the words rang in the air around the terrified man, he beheld an incredible sight. All around him, spectral hands began to sprout from the earth, and following them was all manner of bent, twisted, and broken warriors. The host of the dead had risen, and one thing they all had in common was allegiance to Clan MacLeod. One of the grey warriors addressed the man, and told him that this was the spirit host of the MacLeods. Every soldier and warrior killed by the MacDonalds of Clan Ranald now stood before him and demanded to be avenged. The host had chosen him, a mortal, to lead the army of the dead and bring them victory and glory on the battlefield. The man was shaken, but instantly knew that his duty was always to the clan, and agreed to captain the spirit host. The slua then sped across the sky, heading to South Uist. When the ghostly legion once again landed, they were met by a very similar yet opposite rising. Thousands of ghostly warriors stood before them, mustered from all the graves in South Uist, and all bearing the constant hope of the MacDonalds of Clan Ranald. A great tall, mortal man ventured forth from the Clan Ranald host, and our MacLeod captain went to receive him. At the meeting of these commanders, an agreement was made that in order to solve this very old dispute, the two mortal men would wrestle, and the winner would claim victory for their clan. The rival spirit hosts would supervise this challenge of strength and ensure that there was no foul play. With thunderous calls from the spectating spectres, the battle began, and instantly the short MacLeod man was overpowered by the great stature of the Clan Ranald man. He knew he could not win this fight, and soon he would lose not only the match, but the honour of his clan. It was then that the man remembered that he had been flaying a sheep when the spirits took him, and reaching into his stocking, drew the Scotsman's black knife, or skean dhu. When he believed that the Clan Ranald men were not looking, he surreptitiously thrust the blade into the chest of his opponent. And as the large man lost power, the MacLeod threw him to the floor. Then rose from the MacLeod host a great cheer, and Cogga and I Clan Ranald, or the war is against Clan Ranald. The abrupt end to the struggle in MacLeod's favour was the signal for the spectral hosts to disperse. The grudge had been settled, and so the ghostly figures would soon return to sleep beneath the earth in their respective territories, and the young MacLeod man would find himself once more upon the threshold of his own home. But as he ventured inside and set about the sheep he was flaying, the man could not find his blade. The black knife was gone. Some days later, a group of men were out collecting their cattle from a pasture in South Uist, and came upon the lifeless body of one of their kinsmen, and found a skean dhu thrust into his breast. The carved antler handle of the black blade was marked with the clan crest of MacLeod, and once more the old Clan Ranald vow was renewed. Thank you for listening, and a special thank you to my wonderful patrons who support my work and help me make these videos. Officially, the feud between the MacLeods and the MacDonalds of Ranald would be stopped by the Scottish Privy Council in 1601, as the war between the clans was so brutal and so many men had lost their lives that the Scottish crown grew worried it would destabilise the Isles, and more importantly, both clans were due the crown large sums of gold. In 1608, the island clan chiefs were all called to attend a meeting with Lord Ochiltree, the king's representative. There, the king's plans for the Isles was unveiled, and all the chiefs whom disagreed with the king's vision were thrown into prison until calmer minds prevailed. Eventually, most of the chiefs would submit to the King of Scotland and were released, but now them and their men were in the ranks of the royal army. Of course, the official end of the feud was never truly recognised, and even though the two clans would fight side to side in the upcoming Anglo-Scottish War, they would once again return to opposing sides during the Jacobite Rising. From then on, the old feud was continued in secret for many, many years. There are tales from those of an older generation which mention that in fairly recent times, the animosity between the clans could cause a fight in almost any pub in Scotland. But these days, the old clan feuds seem to have largely disappeared. But if ever clan hails you, I hope you will return to hear more tales of Scottish folklore. Sluagh.